I stared at the lease agreement in my trembling hands. My name was there, bold and clean, in cursive. But I hadn't signed it. The landlord looked at me like I was lying. My boyfriend, Eric, stood beside me, arms crossed like he was the victim. "Maybe you forgot," he said calmly, too calmly. I felt my stomach drop. That signature wasn't just fake. It was a lie wrapped in control, inked in betrayal. In that moment, I realized this wasn't about rent. It was about how someone you trust the most can write your name on paper, like you're theirs to use. I walked out of that office, holding the lease like it was evidence because it was. And that day, I made a choice. If he could forge my name, I could rewrite the story. Have you ever had your trust signed away without permission? Comment below if you've ever had someone cross a line they can't uncross. I still remember the first time I met Eric Dawson. It was the kind of fall day you want to wrap in a blanket and never let go of, crisp, golden, like the leaves were holding their breath in midair. I had just moved to Richmond, Virginia, to start fresh after finishing my graphic design degree. I was 25, scared, ambitious, and a little too trusting for my own good. Eric worked at the local coffee shop near my apartment. He wasn't a barista, he was the guy who fixed the Wi-Fi when it went out and restocked the pastries. But every time I came in with my sketchbook, he'd stop by my table with a smile and some clever comment about what I was drawing. "You're either designing a murder scene or a wedding invite. No in between, huh?" I laughed the first time he said that. He had this kind of dry humor, the kind that sneaks up on you. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. God, it was easy to get pulled into that. At first, we were just friendly. Then one day he sat down across from me, uninvited, and said, "So, want to hear something crazy? I think we're supposed to know each other." It was corny, but it worked. Eric had that effortless charm that didn't feel like effort at all. He made you feel like he saw something in you that even you missed. For a girl who grew up over-apologizing for taking up space, that kind of attention felt like sunlight after a storm. I was raised by a single mom, Diane Taylor. She did everything for me, worked 2 jobs, went to every school play, and still managed to leave sticky notes with affirmations on my lunch bags. But she was also fiercely protective. When I told her about Eric, the first thing she said was, "What's his last name? And, do you know his mama?" Typical Diane. She believed in love, but only if it came with receipts and a background check. I brushed it off. "He's harmless. Just funny. Sweet." Rachel, my best friend since 6th grade, wasn't convinced either. "Liv, I know you want someone stable, but are you sure this guy isn't just saying what you want to hear?" I ignored them, because Eric made me feel chosen. Not just liked, chosen. We started dating officially a few weeks later. Our first real date was a local art exhibit. He wore a blazer 2 sizes too big and brought me a bag of gummy worms instead of flowers because he remembered me saying I liked them better. "I figured roses die, but sugar is forever," he grinned. I thought it was adorable. Things moved fast, but it didn't feel rushed. He was thoughtful in the small things. He left notes on my fridge, cleaned my laptop screen when I wasn't looking, brought me snacks during late-night design sessions. We had inside jokes about squirrels stealing our mail. I taught him how to use Photoshop. He taught me how to change a tire. I introduced him to my mom after 3 months. She stayed polite, but I could feel her suspicion thick in the air. "So, Eric," she asked, stirring her coffee slowly, "what are your long-term plans?" He smiled. "Honestly, I'm still figuring it out. But I know I want to build something real with your daughter." Diane nodded, but later she pulled me aside and said, "Honey, he's charming, but charm fades. Look for consistency." I wish I'd listened. Eric didn't have a fancy job, but he was always talking about starting his own tech support business. He even made flyers and passed them around to neighbors. I helped him design his logo, a little robot with sunglasses. We'd dream up names together: Bite Me, Techspert, Fix It Dawson. He always lit up when we talked about the future. I was all in. I believed in us. We got a small apartment together on the west side of town. It wasn't much, but we made it ours. I painted one wall mustard yellow. He hated it but let it stay. He cooked, I cleaned. We fought sometimes, mostly over small things like whose turn it was to do laundry, but he always apologized first. "I can't stay mad at you," he'd say, pulling me into a hug. "Even when you shrink my sweaters." I started to think about marriage.
Kids, maybe.
We talked about adopting a dog. I even made a Pinterest board titled Future Dawson Nest, filled with home office setups, nursery ideas, and his and hers mugs. But slowly, things started to shift. He began showing up late to dinner. Said he had client calls that ran long. Sometimes he'd disappear for a whole day and text back hours later, saying his phone had died. But he always had a way of talking me down from suspicion. "Liv, you know me. I never lie to you." He said it so often I started to believe it just because I wanted to. One night, we were lying in bed and I told him, "You're the safest person I know." He kissed my forehead and whispered, "That's all I ever wanted to be."
God, it hurts to remember that now.
There was one time, this was probably a year into us living together, when my mom called crying. My Uncle Greg had collapsed at work and was in the ICU. I told Eric I had to drive up to Maryland to be with the family. "Of course," he said. "I'll hold down the fort." I was gone for 3 days. When I came back, something was off. The apartment smelled like cologne I didn't recognize. The bed sheets had been changed. Eric never changed the sheets. And there was a wine glass in the sink that wasn't mine. I asked him about it. He laughed. "Babe, I had Josh over. We drank and played video games. You're being paranoid." Josh, his old college friend, was kind of a ghost, always mentioned, never seen. I let it go. I felt crazy even bringing it up. But after that trip, I started noticing other cracks. He stopped helping around the house. Bills were late. When I asked him about our shared bank account, he'd say, "Relax, I got it handled." But then I'd get overdraft alerts on my phone. Still, I held on. Because when Eric was good, he was so good. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. And when you've grown up with a father who walked out before your 5th birthday, that kind of attention is addictive. But beneath it all, I started feeling like I was balancing on glass. Like if I asked too many questions or pushed too hard, everything would shatter. And eventually it did. But not before he did something I could never have imagined. He forged my signature. Not once, not twice, but enough times to make me wonder if I'd ever really known him at all. And that's where everything began to unravel. I started noticing little things first. Nothing that screamed betrayal, but whispers that grew louder each day. There was a time I trusted Brian with everything. He was my fiancé, charming, articulate, the kind of man who always had the right words at dinner parties. My friends adored him. Even my dad, who was hard to impress, once said, "That boy's got his act together." But behind closed doors, he started changing. It began with the mail. I came home from work one evening, tired, aching, and saw a few envelopes already opened on the kitchen counter. I didn't think much of it at first. We lived together after all. But one of them had my name on it, only mine. "Hey, Bree." I called from the doorway, holding up the letter. "Did you mean to open this one?" He didn't even look up from the couch. "Oh, yeah. Thought it might be a bill or something. Just wanted to make sure." It was from my old college. It had nothing to do with him. I brushed it off, thinking, maybe he's just being proactive. But then it happened again. And again. Phone calls I never received because he forgot to tell me someone called. Emails I found in the trash folder weeks later. A credit card I never signed up for showing up in my name. I brought it up gently, hesitantly even. "Brian, is it just me, or have there been a few weird things lately with our mail and accounts?" He chuckled. Not the kind laugh I fell in love with, but the condescending one. "You're just stressed, babe. You work too hard. Come sit with me." That line? He used it like a sedative. Every time I had a concern, he'd smile, pat the couch, and say, "You're just tired." And for a while I believed him. But it wasn't just the mail. It was how he started making little jokes in front of friends, jokes at my expense. Like when we were at Taylor and Mike's housewarming, and I was telling a story about my client who nearly sued his own cousin over a business deal. Brian chimed in with, "Careful guys, Charlotte's always picking up stories so she can write them into her little memoir someday. Everyone laughed, but it stung. It wasn't about the story. It was about the tone, the smirk, the way his hand never touched mine the whole night. After that, I started listening more closely, watching his eyes when I spoke, noticing how often he'd interrupt me or steer conversations toward himself. It was like I had become his audience instead of his partner. Then there was that afternoon at the notary. We were supposed to meet my real estate agent, Melissa, at her office to finalize some paperwork for a property I was investing in. Just me. My money. My decision. But when I got there, Melissa looked confused. "I thought Brian already dropped off the signed agreement yesterday," she said. My heart thudded. What? She pulled out a copy. And there it was. My signature. In my handwriting. Only I never signed it. I stared at it. I wanted to believe it was some mistake. Maybe she mixed up papers from another client? But when I asked her who handed it in, she said clearly, "Your fiancé, Brian." I felt dizzy.
Sick.
Cold all over. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I took that night to watch him. Observe. He acted like everything was normal, asking if I wanted pizza or Thai, telling me to rest my feet, offering to pour me wine. He was too normal. Too smooth. The next morning, I checked the kitchen drawer where we kept stamps, keys, and my signature pad. The pen I used for documents was missing, and there was a copy of a notarized affidavit beneath some junk mail with my forged initials on it. My stomach dropped. That was when the gaslighting escalated. I asked him straight, "Brian, did you sign something for me at Melissa's office?" He smiled like I was a child. "I just expedited things for you, babe. You said you wanted that place, remember? I was just helping." I stepped back. "That's not how it works. You can't sign for me." He waved his hand. "You're being dramatic." That word. Dramatic. It was his favorite grenade to throw whenever I got close to the truth. The following week, my friend Jenna invited us over for dinner. She's a paralegal, and sharp as hell. During dessert, I brought up the situation vaguely, asking, hypothetically, what happens if someone signs on your behalf without you knowing? Jenna didn't miss a beat. That's forgery. Federal offense. Especially if it's tied to real estate or legal contracts. Brian Spoon paused in midair. I caught the flicker in his eyes. That night, he didn't kiss me goodnight. Didn't say a word. He went straight to bed with his back turned. Something cracked inside me. It wasn't just about the signature anymore. It was about the lie. The entitlement. The way he believed he could own my name, my choices, my voice. But I didn't cry. Not anymore. I started copying documents, gathering papers, backing up emails. I was done being his silent partner. The woman he could smirk past, talk over, or sign for. I didn't know it then, but the storm had only just begun. And this time, I wasn't going to shrink myself to avoid lightning. I remember the way my hands shook that morning. Not from the cold, but from something deeper. Something darker. I was in the kitchen making coffee when the doorbell rang. It wasn't just any ring. It was aggressive. Demanding. I opened the door, still in my bathrobe, to find a courier holding a thick envelope. "Are you Miss Rachel Carter?" he asked. I nodded slowly. He handed it to me and said, "You've been served." I didn't even close the door properly. I just sat on the floor with the envelope in my lap. My breath caught as I tore it open, and my vision blurred as I read what was inside. A formal lawsuit. Fraud charges. Against me. I blinked, my mind racing. The letter accused me of attempting to claim property and assets I had no legal ownership over. My heart thundered in my chest. "This has to be a mistake," I whispered to no one. Then, like a haunting echo, I remembered the form I'd signed months ago. Or the one he said I didn't need to sign because he'd take care of it. My ex-boyfriend, Brandon Thomas. He had handled the house paperwork, the business permits, even some joint savings we were moving around for our boutique. I trusted him with everything. He was the one who had the lawyer friend, the financial advisor, the connections. And now I was being accused of forging documents I'd never even seen. I drove straight to my sister Emily's place. I was shaking. I couldn't think straight. She opened the door and took one look at me and said, "Rachel, what happened?" I held up the envelope. We sat on her couch, side by side, as I explained everything. I think Brandon forged my signature," I said, the words tasting like acid. Emily didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me with eyes wide and stunned. Then her mouth opened slightly and she whispered, "Oh my God, Rach, that's criminal." Her words made it real. The next few days were a spiral of phone calls, panic, and unraveling truths. I hired an attorney, Jenna Whitaker, who was tough and to the point. "We'll get a handwriting expert. We'll subpoena the documents." "But Rachel," she leaned forward, lowering her voice, "do you trust this man to tell the truth under oath?" I felt my stomach twist. "No," I said. "I don't." It wasn't just about the forged signature. As we dug deeper, Brandon had used my personal information to open a credit line. He'd moved funds from our business account into a private account in his name. Thousands of dollars gone. Months of work gone. And the worst part? He left town the moment I confronted him. I tried calling. No response. I texted, "Brandon, what the hell did you do? There's a lawsuit. My name is all over things I never signed. Where are you?" No reply. I messaged his mother, who lived in Michigan. She said, "I thought you two broke up weeks ago." I haven't heard from him. That's when I felt it. Betrayal mixed with humiliation. I wasn't just a woman scorned. I was a victim of identity theft by the man I once planned to marry. 2 weeks later, the police knocked on my door. Officer Delgado and Officer Simmons. "We have a few questions about some documents related to property transfers," he said. I invited them in. My lawyer was already on speakerphone. I sat across from the officers, my voice calm, but shaking underneath. "I didn't sign those papers. Brandon Thomas did. He told me he was handling it. He forged my signature." The officers exchanged glances. "We've seen the handwriting samples. It's been escalated," Officer Delgado said. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice cracking. "It means we're issuing a warrant for Brandon's arrest. And we'd like your permission to release a statement publicly. He's been targeting more than one woman, and your case helps strengthen our investigation." "More than one?" My chest tightened. "You mean he's done this before?" The officer nodded. "We believe so. And we believe you're the only one willing to speak out." That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I felt hollow, violated, like someone had crawled inside my life and rearranged everything without my consent. But beneath the pain, something else was growing.
Fire.
I remembered all the times Brandon smiled while lying. All the "I've got this" moments. All the manipulation cloaked in charm. He didn't just steal from me. He tried to erase me from my own story. No more. 3 weeks later, I posted a video. No fancy production. Just me, my face raw with emotion, sitting on my couch. I titled it, "He Forged My Signature and Tried to Ruin My Life." I spoke about everything.
The trust.
The lies. The lawsuit. The police. The way betrayal doesn't always show up in loud ways. Sometimes it's buried in paperwork and passwords. And then I ended with, "If this has happened to you, you're not alone. And you're not crazy for trusting someone. The shame isn't yours to carry." I posted it. I closed my laptop. And I cried. By morning, the video had 84,000 views. By the end of the week, over 2 million. Women from all over were sharing their stories. Of forged documents. Of financial abuse. Of manipulation hidden behind love. Brandon's name was trending on Twitter. The police received multiple new reports. One woman said he used her credit to buy a boat. Another said he vanished after taking her car. And just like that, his web started unraveling. 2 months later, I stood in court. Brandon sat across from me, hair slicked back, still trying to charm the judge. But I had the truth. I had my voice. And this time, I was the one in control of the narrative. I stared at the crumpled papers in my lap. My name, my signature, but not my hand. That was the moment the heat rose in my throat. My pulse was loud in my ears like war drums. For weeks, I had tried to convince myself I was overthinking, that maybe I had signed those documents and just didn't remember. Maybe I had misplaced them. Maybe I was tired, stressed. But now, with irrefutable proof in front of me, it was as if every cell in my body stood at attention. I wasn't crazy. Jake had forged my name. He'd taken my trust and weaponized it. And the only reason I'd found out was because I'd gone into the county clerk's office to get a certified copy of the shared property release form we'd supposedly filed together. The woman behind the counter had smiled, pulled up the record, printed the page, and handed me the evidence of his betrayal. And that's when I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a premeditated lie. That night, I sat at my kitchen counter with my laptop, a cup of cold coffee, and a legal pad. I wrote everything down. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I went still. The kind of still you get before a storm breaks loose. Because here's the thing about being betrayed. Once you accept it, there's a click inside your soul. It's like a key turning. You're not the same after that. I called my friend Megan first. She was a paralegal for a family law firm downtown. "Tell me everything," she said without skipping a beat. I sent her photos of the forged documents.
She paused.
Then she said two words that lit a fire inside me. Press charges. That night, I printed everything. Every email. Every photo of my ID that Jake had probably used to falsify my consent. The next morning, I walked straight into the police station. I wore a black blazer and jeans. No makeup. Just purpose. I asked to file a report for forgery and fraud. The officer raised an eyebrow. But when I laid the documents down and explained calmly how Jake had faked my approval to access our joint assets, the energy shifted. His pen started moving.
Fast.
Later that week, I sent Jake a message. "I know what you did. I'm not going to scream. I'm going to document everything. I've filed the report. This is your chance to come clean before I hand it all to the media." I waited, and like the coward he truly was, he replied 3 hours later. "I thought we were on the same page. Why are you doing this?" No apology. No ownership. Just manipulation. It was like watching someone drown in a pool they filled themselves. I didn't respond. Instead, I made a video. Just me, my phone, and the truth. I didn't name him. I didn't need to. I told a story of how a man I trusted used my name to access funds, forge documents, and reroute a property deal I hadn't agreed to. I showed the forged signature side by side with my real one. I told women watching to never ignore their gut, to read everything, and to never sign away their peace. By midnight, it had 700K views. But nothing was more satisfying than what happened at the property meeting. Jake didn't know I'd be there. He walked into the conference room all smug with his real estate agent, probably thinking he was going to walk away with the deal finalized under my approval. He was mid-sentence when I walked in behind the lawyer. He froze. I placed the forgery report and my real signature samples on the table. And I looked him straight in the eye and said, "You forged my name. You tried to erase me. But here I am in full color." Silence. His agent cleared his throat and awkwardly started packing up. Jake tried to speak, but my lawyer raised a hand and said, "Anything you say now is going to be part of an active investigation." The room emptied like air from a balloon. But it wasn't over. 3 days later, Jake's mugshot showed up on a local news site. Real estate broker charged with forgery after ex-fiancé comes forward. The comment section was a war zone. People rallied. Women shared similar stories. And suddenly, I was no longer ashamed. I was vindicated. For years, I had taught myself to stay quiet, to pick my battles, to be the bigger person. But sometimes being the bigger person means standing up even if your legs shake. Sometimes it means calling the police even if your voice cracks. Sometimes it means holding your own hand while walking away from someone who signed your name like you were just a line to cross. Jake forged my name, but I signed my own piece. After I reported Ethan to the authorities, everything moved faster than I could process. One moment I was standing outside the police station, my fingers trembling as I clutched my statement, and the next, the news had spread like wildfire. I didn't expect it to go viral. But when the story hit local news, man arrested after forging wife's signature in property scam, the internet latched on. Someone from the station must have leaked my tear-streaked photo. I was wearing the same navy hoodie I'd slept in the night before. My face, raw, swollen, and hollow-eyed, ended up on the front page of dozens of blog posts.
Some praised me.
Some mocked me. All of them talked about me. And somehow, that was lonelier than the silence I'd lived in with Ethan for years. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. DMs from strangers. You're so brave. Comments like he deserves to rot, and men like him ruin women's lives. At first, it felt good, empowering even. But then came the other voices. You really had to ruin his life that publicly? Why didn't you handle this privately? You could have just left. She must have pushed him to it. No man goes that far unless he's desperate. That one broke me. I remember sitting on the edge of my bathtub, fully clothed, the room spinning. I'd already lost Ethan, my trust in the world, and the illusion of a normal marriage. Now I was losing my sense of safety in my own story. My sister-in-law, Brittany, blocked me. My own cousin Megan unfollowed me and posted a vague tweet about people using trauma for clout. Even my father called me and said, "You sure you're not blowing this out of proportion, Haley? He's still family." Still family? He forged my name, stole from me, lied to my face. And I was being asked to calm down for the sake of his reputation? That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about Ethan. It was about them. The ones who had always told me to shrink myself, to play nice, to protect the family name. A memory came flooding back. Christmas at Aunt Linda's house when I was 11. Ethan, then just my teenage cousin's new boyfriend, was flirting with me. I was a kid. I told my mom I felt weird and she laughed. He's just being nice. Don't make it awkward. That pattern? It never stopped. The overlooking, the gaslighting, the quiet brushing of things under the rug in favor of keeping the peace. So when Ethan betrayed me on paper, legally, financially, it wasn't just a crime. It was the final piece in a puzzle I'd been trying not to see my whole life. The loneliness settled in like fog. I'd always thought I'd miss him. Miss his laugh, the way his hand rested on the small of my back at dinner parties. But what I really missed was having anyone, who made me feel less invisible. Now, I was more visible than ever, and I never felt more alone. I stopped answering most messages. Let the dishes pile up. Ate cereal out of the box on the couch while Netflix auto-played shows I wasn't watching. Nights stretched longer. The silence in the apartment?
Loud.
But there were cracks in the darkness. An old friend from college, Serena, messaged me. Saw what happened.
I'm sorry.
I've got wine, bad takeout, and a couch if you need to scream. I cried reading that. Not just because she reached out, but because she remembered me. The me before Ethan. The me I'd tucked away so deep I'd almost forgotten she existed. I took her up on it. That night, we sat in her living room, greasy noodles in our laps, and I told her everything. Every detail. She didn't flinch, didn't interrupt, just listened. And when I was done, she said the 4 words no one else had dared. You did the right thing. But healing doesn't move in straight lines. There were nights I wanted to take it all back. Nights I stared at my phone, finger hovering over Ethan's contact, just to hear his voice. Just to pretend none of it had happened. That I wasn't that woman now, the one on the blogs, in the TikToks, on podcasts dissecting relationship red flags. I didn't want to be a case study. I just wanted to be held. But then I'd remember the way he signed my name, so confidently, so deliberately, and I'd remember. I wasn't the one who let go.
He was.
One of the hardest moments was walking into the grocery store and seeing Mrs. Lane, our old neighbor. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and admiration. You're brave, Haley. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It meant the world, and yet I still went home and cried for an hour. Because being brave is exhausting. Being the one who speaks up, who presses charges, who becomes the story, it means carrying the weight of silence others left behind. And most days, I wasn't brave. I was just tired. But slowly, there was light. I started seeing a therapist named Angela. She wore mismatched earrings and let me talk in loops without judgment. In one session, she asked, "Who were you before the betrayal?" The question haunted me, because I realized I'd built my entire identity around surviving him, around maintaining peace, around being the good wife. I didn't even know what I liked anymore. So I started small. I redecorated my apartment. Not for Instagram, not for resale value, for me. Yellow throw pillows. A bookshelf in the kitchen. Plants I named after old sitcom characters. I wasn't rebuilding my marriage. I was rebuilding myself. I won't pretend healing came easily. For weeks after the trial ended and his sentencing was confirmed, I walked through life like I was wearing someone else's skin. Too tight in some places, too loose in others. My name is Rachel Miller, and I had to learn how to rebuild after being betrayed by someone I once thought I loved. There were mornings I'd wake up expecting to hear his key turn in the door, even though I'd changed the locks. There were evenings I'd instinctively grab 2 plates out of the cabinet before remembering I was alone now. It wasn't just about losing a relationship, it was the theft of my peace, my stability, and the version of myself I was when I still believed I was safe. But healing is funny. It doesn't arrive like a flood. It creeps in, quiet, slow, intentional. The first person who really helped me start over was Tracy, my neighbor from 2 doors down. I barely knew her beyond a wave or a quick hi when we passed each other getting groceries. But one afternoon, I found her outside watering her plants, and I just broke.
I didn't mean to.
I just cracked. "I don't know how to stop being angry," I told her. "I don't know how to stop hearing his voice in my head." Tracy didn't judge me. She just handed me a cup of tea, let me cry, and then shared her own story about her ex-husband and how she rebuilt her life after he left her with debt and no explanation. It was the first time I felt less alone. After that, I started attending a women's support group at the local library. Every Thursday night at 6:30, we'd gather, strangers at first, but not for long. We talked about betrayal, about shame, about how hard it was to trust ourselves again. And in that circle, I found something priceless: reflection. One evening, during a session focused on identity, the group leader asked, "Who are you beyond what they did to you?" That question shattered me, because I didn't know. But over the next few months, I started finding out. I enrolled in a graphic design course, something I'd always wanted to try, but never had the time or energy for while I was consumed in that toxic relationship. I also took a temporary job at a community center. It wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful. Helping others, especially women coming out of difficult situations, became a strange balm for my own soul. Each story I heard made me feel more human, more seen, more real. I also reconnected with my younger brother, Jason, who I'd grown distant from during my relationship with him. Jason had always been wary of my ex, but instead of saying, "I told you so," he simply showed up with groceries, with dog food for my lab, Bentley, and sometimes with a bottle of red wine and a silly movie. "I've got your back," he said one night, hugging me a little tighter than usual. "No more secrets between us." That line hit me hard, because so much of what had gone wrong had grown in secrecy. So I made a vow: never again will I stay silent to keep someone else comfortable. I also started journaling. At first it was messy, just raw emotions, spilled anger, confused timelines. But eventually, it started to shape into something cohesive. People began encouraging me to post snippets online. And one post in particular, a piece about how betrayal doesn't break you, it unmasks you, went viral. It had over 600,000 views within 48 hours. Women messaged me from all over the world, sharing their stories. Some had been financially manipulated, others emotionally abandoned. Many had never told a soul until they read my words. And suddenly I realized what he meant for harm had given birth to my voice. That post led to podcast invites, then speaking opportunities. I started a newsletter called Reclaim and Rise, where I talk about healing from betrayal, setting boundaries, and rediscovering power. Did I still have hard days? Of course. There were still court fees, therapy sessions, random triggers. Sometimes a commercial would play a song that reminded me of him, and I'd have to step into the next room just to breathe again. But the woman I was becoming? She didn't scare easily. She knew what it meant to be deceived and still choose truth. She understood the cost of silence and now preferred uncomfortable honesty over pretty lies. And most importantly, she had her own back now. One evening, about a year after the arrest, I stood at the mirror before a speaking event, adjusting a simple necklace my mom gave me when I was 16. I looked into my reflection, not to check my lipstick, but to meet my own eyes. "You made it," I whispered. Not because I had gone viral, not because he was in jail, but because I could finally say I liked the woman staring back at me. I walked onto that stage with a calm heart and a fierce voice. And I began. "My name is Rachel Miller. A man I trusted forged my signature, lied to my face, and nearly cost me everything. But that's not the story I'm here to tell. I'm here to tell you how I took it all back. I want you to remember something. Something that took me years to believe about myself, and maybe you're still trying to believe it too. You're not crazy for noticing the little things. You are not too sensitive for feeling that something was off. And you are definitely not wrong for standing up for yourself, even if it makes people uncomfortable, even if it shatters the image others have tried to force on you. You see, when my ex, Mark, forged my signature on legal documents to steal what belonged to me, it wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was an erasure of my voice. He tried to silence me, to manipulate the narrative, and to make sure no one would believe my version of the truth. But guess what? The moment I chose me, the moment I walked into that police station, trembling but determined, was the moment I reclaimed my name. My story. My identity. I didn't expect the story to go viral. I wasn't chasing views or sympathy. I was chasing justice. And somehow, along the way, I found something even more powerful. Validation. When people heard what happened to me, they didn't say, "Oh, maybe you misunderstood." They didn't say, "Are you sure you're not exaggerating?"
No. They said.
Finally, someone said it out loud. They said, "That happened to me too." And I stayed silent. So now it's my turn to ask you something personal. Have you ever felt erased in your own story? Like someone edited your truth and replaced it with their own version because it made them more comfortable? Have you ever felt like people only support you when you're silent, sweet, and small, but the moment you speak up, you're labeled dramatic, bitter, or difficult? If your answer is yes, then I want to tell you right here, right now. You are not alone. You are not the problem. You are not too much. You are exactly the amount of fierce, intuitive, and powerful that you are meant to be. And if you've ever been lied to, manipulated, or made to feel like your reality didn't matter, let my story be a reminder. You can take your power back. Let's talk about what going viral really meant for me. It wasn't about likes or shares. It was about finally being seen. It was about women from all over the country and even across the world sending me messages like, "I thought I was crazy too until I saw your video. My ex forged a lease in my name. You're the first person I've heard talk about this. You gave me the courage to speak to a lawyer. Thank you." These aren't just comments. These are voices that were waiting for permission to rise. And maybe today, your voice is next. So if you're watching this right now, and your gut has been screaming at you that something's wrong, listen.
Trust it.
I didn't have hard proof when I first suspected Mark was hiding something. I just had my body tightening every time he smiled a little too easily, deflected one too many questions, or left out just enough detail to confuse me. Your intuition is not random.
It is not weak.
It is ancestral armor. It is spiritual intelligence. It is the reason you're still standing despite everything you've survived. You don't need the whole courtroom to agree with you before you take your first step toward truth. You only need you. Now, I want to turn this video into a community. If you've ever had your signature forged, literally or metaphorically, tell your story in the comments. Let's stop pretending this kind of betrayal only happens in movies or messy divorces. It happens in families. It happens in friendships. It happens in business. It happens in marriages where silence becomes currency. Share your story below. Or just drop a heart emoji if you're not ready to speak. We'll know what you mean. And if someone replies to you with support, remember this moment. This is what real connection feels like. not the fake unity that only lasts as long as you stay quiet. A few things I want you to carry with you before you go. 1. Your voice is power, even if it shakes. 2. The truth doesn't need permission to exist. 3. You are not responsible for making liars comfortable. 4. Healing isn't always graceful. Sometimes it's loud, public, and a little messy. And that's okay. You deserve a life where you don't have to double-check every sentence, every document, every motive of the people around you.
You deserve rest.
You deserve clarity. You deserve peace that doesn't come with conditions. And finally, thank you. Thank you for listening to my story, for holding space for my pain and my power, for helping this story reach someone who needed it more than I'll ever know. If this resonated with you, even just a little, I'd be honored if you'd like this video, comment with your experience, or even just share it with someone who's going through something similar. Subscribe if you want more truth-telling, raw honesty, and healing through story. This isn't just a story about a forged signature. It's a story about a woman who remembered her worth and chose to be her own witness. Maybe that woman is you too.